Hi everyone, my name's Mark Atkin, and I'm one of the directors of Crossover, which Lucy Cook mentioned. It's very nice. It brings together people who make games with people who are experts in digital media, together with creators of traditional media, and gets them to come up with new types of interactive media. And our website is crossoverlabs.org for anyone who's interested. And if we look fairly similar, there's a reason for that. Because Doug's my big brother. And because Doug's had a very different kind of career trajectory from myself. And he worked for years in advertising. And in the course of that, he became interested in cults, because he was kind of thinking, if he can learn how cults work, maybe you can think of how to turn a brand into a cult. And I asked him to come here last year and just do like a quick sort of 45-minute presentation on that. And we had quite a small audience, but it went down incredibly well. And then DocFest asked us to see if we could turn it into a workshop. So it's now sort of bringing together what I do, which is workshops, and what he does. So Doug's the kind of the brains behind this, and we tried to sort of put it into an organizational structure in order to start making you do the kind of things that he's going to introduce right now. So first of all, Doug will start talking through some of the principles behind it, and then we're going to get you to actually do stuff. But before that, I just wanted to find out who's in the room. So who is actually a filmmaker? Right. Who's kind of just digital? That one? One? Cool. Two. So who's an activist? It seems to be all of you, probably. Okay, so there's more filmmakers in the room than the others, but we're going to split down into groups at some stage. So then we might ask you to be within those groups. If you're an actor, who's got a kind of a platform? No, okay. It's kind of you, but there's only one of you, so that's all right. But we'll think how to split the groups up. We'll have two groups of filmmakers. Maybe one's a film and one's a production company, and then there's a bunch of activists. And yeah, we just need to sort of work out how to structure the groups. But would you like to?
Shall I start?
Take it away. Yeah,
yep.
Douglas Atkin.
Cool. Sorry. Actually, I'll just start off quickly giving a little bit of background. It'll sound like a self-indulgent resume, but I just want to give you a background of the kind of things I've been working on over the past few years, so you'll get an idea of where all this stuff is coming from. So as Mark said, I have worked for decades in branding and advertising, both in the UK and New York. Got heartily sick of it, and then I did a lot of research, which I'm going to talk about in a second, on why people become committed to things, why people become devoted to a great degree, to anything, and I looked at cults as a source of insight. What happened after that is of course you never know, it became a book, and you never know what happens with it, and it ended up being read by several of the founders of the social networks that we now use, like Flickr and Meetup and Ning and whatnot. And that led me to get out of advertising, into social technology. And I ended up being a partner and a chief community officer at Meetup for a couple of years. Then I left that and helped start a company called Purpose, which mobilizes millions of people to take actions to affect social change. And we advise various NGOs and nonprofits to do that, but we also incubate and launch our own online movements. And one of the most recent ones that you might have come across in the past few months is All Out, which is the first global gay rights movement. And we went from 2,000 people in January, February to 500,000 last time we looked. And this is not just a list of people, these are people taking action. And the things we did was, one of the first things we did was actually stop Brenda being deported to Uganda to certain imprisonment, if not death. I don't know if you remember that action. And then the last thing we did a couple of weeks ago was stop the Kill the Gays bill in Uganda. We did that that's how we got to 500,000 members, and that got noticed by the press, which got noticed by the politicians, so the British government, Obama and everyone else, and the Secretary of State in the US objected, and Uganda has postponed, has not stopped, has postponed discussion of the Kill the Gays Bill. And the Kill the Gays Bill, it's already illegal in Uganda to be gay, but they wanted to make it punishable by death. You can be executed if you're gay. That's the idea behind that bill. Anyway, so I did that, and then the very last thing I've just done is I've launched a brand new social network called Yackit, Y-A-C-K-I-T, which will be launched on Tuesday at the New York Tech Meetup. And it's a way of sharing opinions using video, using a webcam, both live and recorded. So check it out, it's brand new. For those of you who clearly are visually literate and know the power of this rather than this, we hope it's going to take off. We think video is going to be the next big thing on the interwebs. Anyway, so I'm going to go right back to the start, and I'm going to talk about the fundamentals of commitment, the very basics of the human universals of why people belong to things and why they believe in things, belonging and believing. Because those are the drivers of real community. Unless you're tickling those motivations, you're never really going to get a strong community, whether it's 100 people or 100,000. Those are the key drivers, because they're part of human nature, that we need to activate. So to go back in time by about 12 years, I guess now, I'll tell you how I started this. Oh, by the way, this is me. This is meant to brainwash you and hypnotize you into becoming completely devoted. It's has evil powers, this picture. So I was working, I was helping run an ad agency in New York, Manhattan, and I went to a meeting of clients, and they were miserable because they said loyalty is dead, which meant basically that their jobs were over. All products were more or less the same and could be replicated very fast. So what's the point of even trying, they were saying. So I went from there to a focus group of teenagers talking about their favorite brand of sneakers, which happened to be Converse, in a focus group facility in Midtown. And there I saw something completely different. These kids were absolutely devoted and obsessed by these bits of rubber and plastic at the end of the day. They were talking in almost sort of evangelical terms about this particular brand of sneaker and how they would never wear any other kind, ever. So clearly, there was a disparity here, the difference between the marketers who were depressed and the users of a particular brand who were totally obsessed. So I wanted to find out why. Why were they so obsessed at the end of the day about a bit of rubber and plastic? So I thought, well, I'm going to look at cult brands like Mac and Harley and whatnot to try and deconstruct and decode why people become committed to those brands. Since they were talking in religious terms, it seemed like an appropriate thing to do. But then I thought, hey, let's not stop there. Why not look at the original? Why not look at cults themselves and try and figure out how they work, how they make people become so committed? Because in a sense, it was the most extreme form of belonging and belief that I could think of. Perhaps if we put them under the microscope, we can figure out how we might apply some of those insights to anything else. And so in between my day job, over the years, I interviewed hundreds and hundreds of members and ex-members of cults, full-on cults like Krishna, cult-like organizations and like the Marines, fan clubs like the Trekkies, corporate cults like JetBlue, which is an airline in the US, and cult brands like Apple and Harley and whatnot. And the whole principle behind this was that the reasons for joining and staying and convincing others to join, wherever it was on that spectrum, were exactly the same, whether you're in a cult or in a cult brand. If that hypothesis was proven to be incorrect, then that whole exercise was a waste of time because you couldn't apply the insights from the most extreme to the less extreme. And what I found very quickly was that I asked more or less the same questions of everyone, whether they loved a sneaker or loved the Reverend Moon. And the answers I got back were exactly the same. They're just talking about a different subject. The degree of commitment at each end of the spectrum was different, though not always. But the reasons for joining and the reasons for staying and the reasons for becoming an advocate, a proselyte, were exactly the same. So, okay, let's look how this works. So what I'm going to do now is romp through, first of all, why people join cults, or anything for that matter. And then look at how some of those things can be applied to any other form of organization, be it a brand or anything else. Then after I've done this quick romp through this presentation, we're actually going to workshop some of those lessons I learned. There's many things we could workshop, but the two I've picked is how to write, or why you should, and to write a manifesto or ideology or belief system. Because one of the key things I found was, at the heart of any strong belonging organization, there's a very distinctive and very compelling belief system, obviously, point of view, values. And then the second thing we're going to do is actually something I learned from online organizing, which is called the commitment curve. And this is a very practical device. If you're launching a film or want to create a following, or running UK Uncut, this is a very practical sort of concept and thing to use that allows you to get lots of people in and then ramp them up to take more and more difficult and difficult and committed actions. So those are two things we're going to do at the end. So let's talk about cults. So first of all, I want to play 3 quotes. And really from that kind of the range of the spectrum there. So the first quote is from quite a senior member of Krishna. The second one is from a member of a commercial organization, which some people think is more or less a cult, which is Mary Kay, which is like, I don't know if you know Mary Kay, but it's kind of like Avon here. And the third is from a member of a mass cult brand, or what was a mass cult brand, which was Saturn Cars. And I want you to listen to what they're saying, because I think what you'll find is that they're more or less saying the same thing, the same 2 kind of key motivators for what they do.
Well, I think because we all had a common belief, we had a common understanding, and we practiced together, we chanted together, and we did other things together. Like when we'd go out on the street and chant, I really enjoyed doing that. So we had this sort of bond around Krishna.
Now the Mary Kay.
We're not alone. We're definitely in business for ourselves, but we have an amazing network of women all over the country. It's certainly my business, but there's so much more. You just have the sisterhood and the sorority, this feeling of belonging and doing and taking care of each other.
And now Saturn.
The car was nice enough looking, and I needed an economical car. But I liked the idea of the company. I really went because of the message. It's a sort of democratic car, a Midwestern car, full of substance. I felt stupid buying into the whole Saturn family thing, but I bought in hard. They were going to be a different kind of company.
So what you should be hearing is basically they were buying into a value system or a worldview, and it was the other people who were also buying into it, their community, if you like, that was creating the commitment and so forth. We'll go into that in more detail. So just to bring that last example alive a little bit, these are images from what's called the Saturn Homecoming. This particular one was the first one, and it's basically 40,000 ordinary people, instead of taking their vacation in Disney World or the Grand Canyon, went to a factory in Tennessee, for goodness sake, for 3 days. And why did they go? Was it because Saturn is such an amazing, unique vehicle, and they wanted to discuss how the carburetor works? I don't know, whatever. No, it wasn't that. Saturn actually is a very ordinary car. It was as good as, which was a big thing in those days, any other Japanese small compact car. But they went actually to see the other owners of Saturn and meet the people who made the car and the people who sold the car and do finger painting together and listen to country and western music. It was the other people, basically, that they were going for. So this kind of, what the other thing that made me interested in this whole phenomenon was that I realized, looked around and saw that other institutions than the normal ones we've used for millennia to create meaning and to create community were becoming elevated and adopting those roles in society, including brands. And it's perhaps not surprising because many people describe ourselves as a consumer society, so it's perhaps not surprising that brands are becoming these centers, these loci of meaning and community. But I'm not the only one who noticed that. This is a quote from a very senior member of the Vatican. And he said, nowadays there's New Age, there's Buddhism, and there's consumerism. there's more and more morals and ethics on the market. It's becoming harder to compete. So they have a traditional offerer of meaning and community, the Catholic Church, realizing it's in a marketplace, essentially, of meaning and community, and that it had new competitors they had to fight against. So you may find this depressing, I do actually, but it's what's happening. There are other now kind of organisms providing meaning and community. So as I said, I kind of, over the years, talked to hundreds and hundreds of corporate cults, the Marines. Every time someone heard what I was talking about, they'd say, oh, you must research this, you must investigate this. So I did Trekkies, sports fans, all kinds of things. One thing I just want to talk about here, clear it, to get out the way. I'm sure many of you are feeling a little queasy about listening to someone saying cults are great, they should be a great source of insight for everything we do, because cults are destructive and horrible. Certainly, some cults are. But the fact is, cults have been around for as long as we've had culture. In fact, many people argue, including sociologists of religion, that cults are absolutely essential for the health of any society. They are the new mechanisms that allow society to reinvent itself and remain vital. So, for example, Christianity was one of, as it says, this is from the homepage of the University of Virginia, the School of Religion. Every single religion, without exception, started off as a cult. A small band of people devoted to a new idea. Most of them don't survive. They get often persecuted out of existence, but some catch on and gradually transform society in their image. So Christianity was one of several mystery cults in the Eastern Mediterranean 2,000 years ago. It caught on, grew, persecuted its competitors out of existence, and began to dominate the culture of the Roman Empire. It was estimated by 300 AD, when Constantine the Great made it the state religion, 50% of the members of the Roman Empire were Christians. It grew that rapidly. Nowadays, we can see it happening before our eyes. The Church of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons, started off, if you like, as a classic cult in upstate New York in the early 1800s. It has grown rapidly. It's now about 13 million people, mostly outside the US. And now we have, potentially, we do, in fact, have a presidential candidate who's declared Mormon. They hosted the Olympics. It's becoming sort of, it's on the road to be the next world religion by 2080. So that's a kind of classic example. So I don't feel queasy about talking about cults. I mean, again, the ones, whenever we hear the word cult, we normally associate it with Waco and all those things, and they were truly destructive and horrible things. But there are thousands and thousands of cults at any given moment, happily going along and giving people a sense of meaning and a sense of community. And some of them will grow, and some of them will transform the culture in their own image. So they're kind of essential. So what is a cult? Let's define that. So this is a definition by the AAFF, the American Family Federation, which is an anti-cult group in the US, so it's a little negative. A group or movement exhibiting a great or excessive devotion or dedication to some person, idea, or thing, and employing unethically manipulative techniques of persuasion and control to advance the goals of the group's leader, their families, or the community. So I rewrote that and said, it's a group or movement exhibiting a great devotion or dedication to some person, idea, or thing. Its ideology is distinctive, and it has a well-defined and committed community. It enjoys exclusive devotion that is not shared with another group, and its members often become voluntary advocates. And by extension, a cult brand is a brand for which a group of customers exhibit a great devotion or dedication. Its ideology is distinctive, and it has a well-defined and committed community. It enjoys exclusive devotion that is not shared with another brand in the same category, and its members often become voluntary advocates. And that could be applied to anything. It could be a sports team, it could be a movie, it could be anything. So, who joins cults? This is the kind of the general perception. There's the sad, the lonely, the gullible, the subjects of mind control, and the victims of brilliant psychopathic leaders. Now, if this were true, then all the research I did would be irrelevant, because I'd only be getting insights from the very margins of society that would not be relevant to the rest of us. But the fact is that most people who join cults, and I'm taking a punt here, but basically are exactly like the people in this room. They tend to come from, they're not socially inept or psychologically disturbed. They tend to come from very stable backgrounds, good families. They've never wanted for community. They tend to be well educated, stable mentally, and white, mainly white for some reason. No one knows why. So it isn't just me saying this. There's been many studies done by sociologists that have examined this. And I did find this in my own examinations. I interviewed leaders of major corporations who are cult members. I interviewed a mayor of a famous US town. You know, there were these highly socially functioning, normal, stable individuals who have become cult members and very plausibly described why. Actually, here is an ex-cult member who was a very senior guy in the Moonies, and he became a cult deprogrammer called Steve Hassan, or as a cult exit counselor, as they're called, and he found the exact same thing.
Since my departure from the Moon cult, I have counseled or spoken with more than 1,000 former members of cults of all kinds. These people have come from every sort of background and ranged in age from 12 to 85. Although some of them clearly had severe emotional backgrounds before becoming involved, the great majority were stable, intelligent, idealistic people who tended to have good educations and come from respectable families.
So this begs the obvious question, which is, if people are normal and cults are normal, why do they sacrifice so much to become a member of a cult? Why do they offer up? I mean, they're often sacrificing enormous things, everything from huge amounts of time and money to their reputation, their friends, their family. So why do they do it? So that's what I was trying to get to the bottom of during the course of this research, and which I'm going to give you a very fast romp through the whole thing, a very big overview. We can talk about it later if you like. This is why. It's something I call the great cult paradox. The paradox is this, is that people join cults not to conform, they join to become more individual. They join not to conform, but to become more individual. So on the surface, that seems to make no sense. But if you think about it a bit, it makes complete sense. This was a quote from someone who said, I become more myself. X makes, this is the cult, makes the individual more himself. It makes you more you. So the reason why there's an X there is I started researching one cult and then realized it was one of those destructive ones and stopped instantly. And it was also very paranoid and, what's the word? Paranoid. If I pursued and tried to expose them, they would have done bad things to me. So I just stopped. But this is incredibly characteristic. Almost everyone I spoke to said the same thing. The syntax is, what they're actually saying here is really important. I become more myself. Not I became someone else, but basically they took the essential me and made it more so. The cult was basically a sort of particle accelerator for the self. So how does that work? So let's look at a couple of real examples of people that did that. Well, actually, before we do that, let's talk about what the self is, since we're going to be talking about that a lot. This is sort of an accepted idea of what it is amongst anthropologists and psychologists and sociologists and whatnot. It's a story that we tell ourselves, often unconsciously, all of the time, about who we are, what others are like, how the world works, and therefore how one does or does not belong in order to maximize self. So what that basically means is, it can be anything from, you might be watching a documentary on Darfur or something, or child molesters, I don't know. And you will unconsciously, subconsciously be going, God, how can people do that? I couldn't do that. What made them do that? I would never do that because. Or you could be like walking out of a shop and someone doesn't hold the door open for you. You say, well, why did they do that? It's all these, you're not really thinking about this consciously, but you're continuously reading and assessing other people, seeing where you stand, where they fit and where you fit. It's just one of the things that we do. So, how does cult work? How does this cult paradox work? This is very simplified, but just as an example. It goes from a sense of difference to a sense of belonging to a sense of self-actualization. This is the story of a woman who was a member of a Hasidic, an Orthodox Jewish family in New York. As she grew up, she wanted to explore her identity as both a woman and a spiritual being. Now, in that particular religion, those two things are incompatible. And she realized this. So she eventually left, or as she said, she was excommunicated.
You know, as a woman, all the education is geared towards being a wife and mother, and I felt that was too limiting for me. Ultimately, what happened was that I was excommunicated by a bunch of Hasidic rabbis.
So what she did is she left. She kind of just went about her life. She got a job in New York, went on for a few years, and then she walked into a New Age bookstore and started talking to the person behind the bookstore, who turned out to be a Wicca witch. And she got on really well, really liked her, talked more and more, joined, and then did really well in that particular group, and actually became sort of senior. Now, the way she described it is that, you know, she felt different from her culture. She left it. And she wasn't particularly looking for anything else. She just came across it. But when she did, she went, aha, this is me. Now I found my like others. People are also exploring their identity as both a woman and a spiritual being. And so what happens basically is that we all do that, if you think about that. It's a basic human behavior or attitude. All of us, you'd be insane if you didn't feel you were different from someone else. We all go through life, basically, unfortunately, having our own sense of identity and difference, and then we'll knock little bits of it off. We'll like shave off the rough edges simply to get on in life, to have a career, to have a family, be in the right neighborhood, whatever it is. And so there's always a part of us that makes us yearn for and look for a place where we'll feel at home, basically, be where we are. And when you do that, you often feel safe. So as she described it, women who were in the Wicca Witch movement felt finally they'd come home. It's a place where people celebrated who they were rather than criticized who they were. That finally they're being sort of endorsed for and corroborated for the things that other people had taken the piss out of. And what that did is it made them to relax. They could be themselves and blossom. And that's basically how it works, is because you're around like others who are celebrating who you are rather than criticizing who you are, it allows you to be who you are. It allows you to self-actualize because you're amongst like others. And that's how she described it for women here.
I think there's an incredible strength with my own sisterhood. I've seen a lot of women tear down walls that have been in place and really get to know who they are inside. It's a safe place because they're amongst women.
So she blossomed and grew too, self-actualized, if you like, as the woman she was trying to be, and almost became, she said this with a great sense of vindication.
I'm a priestess, I'm a rabbi Wicca, so it's happened for me.
Now, as I said, we all do this, basically. I mean, I'm sure at high school we're all members of either a goth or a nerd or a geek or a jock, probably not in this audience, a jock, but we tend to gravitate towards others who buy into the same kind of things we're into. Why? Because we want to be surrounded by people who celebrate who we are than not. I mean, it's all unconscious. We're not necessarily doing it consciously. It's just what happens. This also can happen for brands too. And when I'm talking about brands, by the way, I'm just talking about both ends of the belonging spectrum here. There's everything in between. That can be a cult built around a movie. It could be a cult built around a political idea or whatever. So let's take Mac. And the reason I chose Mac is kind of everyone knows it. So you probably identify with it, actually. So Mac has always had a kind of, has always been known as being used by people, and this is how people describe who they are, as who don't quite fit in, at least traditionally. It's the computer of choice of architects, people who work in advertising, writers, filmmakers, and so on. And most of these people, for a long time, just always also felt different. This is a quote from someone saying that.
I spent 26 years not conforming. Why the hell should I start now? The Mac has played a big role in helping me not conform.
It's quite a big role for a brand, if you think about it, but it did. So every Mac user and Mac addict I spoke to basically said that Mac is for people who are more creative than the general population and less conformist than the general population. There's one obnoxious teenager I spoke to who said, I'm not like 95% of the rest of the world, they're boring. I use a Mac. So, so the thing about it, though, is the Mac community is that in one sense, it's built around a machine. You know, in a way, this machine is a box of electronics. It's not that different from any other computer, although actually I do think it is. But that's not the point. The machine isn't the point anyway. Not really. The Mac community self-identifies because they share a way of looking at the world. They share an identity, basically. And the Mac has become a kind of beacon for that, for all the nonconformists. Here's someone saying that.
In a literal sense, it is based around a machine, but actually it's all about a certain way of thinking.
So Steve Jobs is a brilliant cult leader. I don't know whether he's consciously a cult leader or just did it instinctively, but he does everything absolutely right. During the second coming of Steve Jobs, when he came back to Apple, the first thing he did was to restate the community's ideology, to restate its manifesto. And it did that with this commercial, which never shows a computer, doesn't even talk about computing. It talked about an attitude, a way of thinking, a worldview. Let me just play that.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them, but the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
And then, of course, he immediately launched products which executed that vision. He launched the colored iMacs, which was like everything else was beige, and woof, there was Apple with its colored iMacs, and continues to do that. So what this commercial was, basically, there was like a collective yes amongst all those little nerds and geeks and people who lived through the dark days of Apple, being criticized for not using Microsoft. And it was like, I'm not alone. There are others out there. And this is like a public vindication of who I am. And actually, there's a guy kind of saying that.
Like, there's nothing wrong with you, that you're not considered an asshole, that people don't say, you're doing this and we're doing that. It's okay to march to the beat of a different drummer.
So, and the thing is, when people gather together, when they're like others, basically, and here listen to this person say what the community and the product enables them to do. It's almost the same sort of syntax as the cult paradox quote.
A Mac made me creative. Well, no, I was actually creative to begin with, but in some ways they made me more creative.
I mean, when I was writing the book, I would go to this cafe in Soho in New York just to get out of the agency and do some thinking. And it's a tiny place. But everyone in there used Macs. And we never mentioned the fact that we used Macs. It was sort of course. And there were writers, there were university teachers, there were some producers there as well. So the community was sort of not particularly apparent until someone walked in with a Dell, some kind of PC. And it was like a palpable drop in temperature. You could feel like the kind of, you do not belong emanating from all of us. We never discussed that, it just happened. And that person would sit down, have their coffee, and open their Mac, their PC, but they would never come back, ever. So, why should you care about commitment and cults? Well, because what happens is people become so invested in the community and the ideology, they'll do anything. This is a quote, and secondly, they become the best unpaid sales force for whatever it is, whether it's a movie or a political party or a religion. They are the best because they are personally recommending and endorsing to their friends and everyone they know that this is best for them. First of all, let me just play you a quote from an impecunious student in New Jersey who could barely afford his lunch, but he would always try and buy direct from Apple.
I think a lot of Mac users feel like almost personally responsible for the well-being of the mother company. I find with Apple, I'm much more prone to buy directly from Apple rather than through a reseller. Just because you want Apple to get everything. You want them to get your money. It's almost like a charity case. It's like, take my money.
And so he would upgrade whenever a new release came out, whatever. And then this quote on the bottom is from a Saturn dealer I spoke to. I'd say about 70% of our new customers come through recommendations. All right, so we just talked about, skimmed over, basically, why people join cults. And these are some of the techniques that you can use, which are all in the book. We've no time to go through all of them, but I'm going to talk about two very quickly if we have time. One is difference, and the second is love. So difference. If you're starting, you could be starting a cult around your film, or you may want to start a church, or, a parents group, whatever. If you want to make it very, very sticky, what you basically need to do is basically talk about what I was talking about before, is you need to provide a home for all those people that are looking for it. So you need to say basically, you're different. And we're different in exactly the same way. Come on in. You'll feel at home. But you really have to say that you're different. If you try to be all things to all people, you won't get that kind of commitment. So here are the 4 Ds of differences, as I call them, that you need to have. You need to determine what your difference is, and your franchise's sense of difference, rather. You need to declare it. You need to demarcate it. And then the 4th one we'll talk about is that you don't have to do this, but it's great fun, and it's very effective, but risky. So determine your franchise's sense of difference. Now, what I mean about this is, this is like the deep down self-identification thing that's in everyone. So, as I said before, we're all knocked off the sharp bits, and we're all just getting along and conforming a little bit to some degree. All of us do. But what is it deep down? How do we actually identify ourselves to ourselves and to the people who really know us? How would we define ourselves? In Harley, most people define themselves as a rebel and a lover of freedom and liberty. So it doesn't matter if you're a management consultant or a dentist, or you're on the lam. At the weekend, you slap on your tattoo and you put on your leather jacket. And it's when you're with your brothers having a beer around your bikes that they really feel at home. And it's sort of taboo to say, to just kind of not really like their great career or their beautiful suburban house or their family, but they confessed up that they did. They said, it's fine, it's good, but it's kind of not me. The real me is when I'm with my brothers shooting the breeze around the bikes at a bar. And so, in the same room, I'd be talking to a cop, an architect, and someone on the lam. And this is a guy actually was on the lam, but he put it really well. It might be a little offensive to some people, but he's kind of expressing it exactly right.
Everyday things. You brush your teeth, you put on your underwear, you go outside, you empty the mailbox, you look through the bills, you go to work, get off at a certain time, you come home, she's got dinner on the table, it's a beautiful night, maybe I'll watch Married with Children, I don't know. That's rigmarole. It's definitely not me.
So Harley really knows this. I mean, over decades, it's figured it out that it's appealing to the rebel in most people. And by the way, when they're doing this, Harley has a 40% leading market share of the motorcycle market in the US. This is not small beer. There's a lot of people out there who feel like they're rebels, even if they can't be it day to day. So once you've figured it out, you need to write your ideology, which we're all, by the way, going to be doing in a minute. And Harley has written theirs. This is from their global branding document that I managed to get a hold of. And they know Harley is not for everyone. Most brands I've worked with in the past really try to be for everyone. It's ridiculous. Unless you're on monopoly, you're not going to get 100% market share. So find the people who really love you and get them, and they'll become a loyal target market. Same for a movie. Oh, by the way, there's all kinds of ways of declaring it. I mean, the culture has declared it for Harley in a way in terms of movies. Hell's Angels basically are like the high priests of Harley. They are the living embodiment of the values. So even if you are an architect, you kind of secretly want to be a Hell's Angel in truth. So then you need to kind of demarcate. You need to be very, very clear about drawing a line in the sand, saying we believe in this and not that, and you belong and you don't. There's no two ways about it. You have to be crystal clear about what you believe in, and it has to be distinctive. Otherwise, you're not different. Otherwise, you're not going to be speaking to the people who are looking to come home to you. So here's a couple of quotes. Now, these quotes are from two guys. They have families. I talked to them about this. Got very respectable jobs. You know, they're kind of nice people. But this is how they feel. And they're talking about demarcation. And you can demarcate in any way. Harley does it in everything it does. It's not just the uniform they're wearing. I mean, like Krishna, Krishna followers, they're wearing a very distinctive uniform. But by the sound of the bike, by the actions of its followers.
What we wear is essentially a fuck off to the outside world. It's a stay the fuck away from me. It does keep people away. I have this great t-shirt that says, fuck off, I have enough friends.
Everyone knows that sound. You can hear it from 3 blocks away. People who can't see the difference between bikes can tell which one is a Harley just from the sound. You can ride a Harley quietly or you can ride one loud. I was riding through town last Sunday morning and decided to make some noise and wake up some people. It was great. It was a great fuck you.
So these aren't Hell's Angels. These are like doing very kind of, serious jobs and nice families and all that. There you go. So the fourth D of difference is demonize. So for millennia, political leaders and religious leaders do this by instinct. Demonizing the other does two really, really important things for any highly committed or high commitment organization. Whether it's a movement, very important in movements. I mean, for example, the UK Uncut, it's very clear who they're demonizing. It's Vodafone and Boots and all the others, and also the politicians who are giving those corporations a break and screwing us in the meantime. But there are two key things that demonization does. Demonization, it creates a very clear communication of your identity as an organization. Because you're defining the other as the opposite as you. They're like the kind of photographic negative of who you are. You're very clearly defining yourself. And the second thing it does is it creates incredibly strong solidarity. So there may be all kinds of dissension and things going on internally, but the moment you paint that there's a threat coming at you from the outside, people rally together and fight against it. So even our previous glorious leader in the US did that with evildoers. But almost all religious and political leaders do it all of the time. So just to give you an example of some really good ones. So Steve Jobs, as I said, is a classic cult leader, and he has done this for decades, as has Branson. For a while back then, he wrote "No Way, BAAA" on the side of his planes when American Airlines and British Airways were thinking of merging. Apple has done this all the time. First of all, it started off with IBM, then it was Microsoft, then just PCs in general. But it's always been about their big, oppressive, non-entrepreneurial people out to get us. And we're keeping the flame alive of independence, entrepreneurialism, creativity, and fun. And the same with Virgin. He's basically saying BA, and they were, are out to get us. We have to exist in order to keep the freedom of the skies. So I'm going to play a little bit of a speech that Steve Jobs gave in 1984 when he launched the Mac. And this is, the audience here is, you'll hear them, are software developers and retailers, okay? So just bear that in mind.
It is now 1984. It appears IBM wants it all. Apple is perceived to be the only hope to offer IBM a run for its money. Dealers, initially welcoming IBM with open arms, now fear an IBM-dominated and controlled future. They are increasingly and desperately turning back to Apple as the only force that can ensure their future freedom. IBM wants it all and is aiming its guns on its last obstacle to industry control, Apple. Will Big Blue dominate the entire computer industry, the entire information age? Was George Orwell right about 1984?
So it sounds like a kind of religious tent meeting, and it was a bunch of geeks, you know. Then he played this commercial.
Today we celebrate the first glorious anniversary of the information purification methods. Created for the first time in all history a garden of pure ideology, where each work may bloom, secure from the pests of a contradictory rules. Purification of rules is more powerful a weapon than any fleet or army on earth. We are one people, with one will, one resolve, one cause. Our enemies shall talk themselves to death, and we will bury them with their own concoction. We shall prevail.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
That commercial only aired a couple of times, you know, a long time ago. I did this presentation once in the Apple store in Soho in New York, and there were lots of Apple employees walking around, and they could like recite the commercial. They weren't even born when this was aired, because that, by the way, is a great declaration of the ideology of the worldview. Right there, again, no computers. He's just saying what the company stands for. And he's still doing it now. I mean, I'm a Mac, I'm a PC is a classic demonization campaign. So those are the 4 Ds of difference: determine, declare, demarcate, and demonize. Now I'm quickly going to go through love. So this was a surprise to me, actually. If you ask a priest, why did someone convert and join the church? They'll often, probably always say, the Word of God. The Word of God convinced them and they became a Christian or whatever. If you ask a politician, they'll say, it was my manifesto. If you ask a brand manager, they'll say it was the brand DNA, the ideology that I just showed you. And ideology, I can't tell you how important ideology is. It's like the second most important thing in creating cult-like attraction. That's why we're going to do this little exercise in a minute. But it's not the most important thing. The most important thing are the other people, which is not surprising if you think about it. It's the other people who you realize are just like you and different from everyone else. So it didn't matter who I talked to, whether it was a member of Krishna or this secretive cult called The Work that I came across, or a Mac user or a Harley user or someone who worked for JetBlue or whatever, they all basically said the same thing, which is, I joined because I liked the people. And if you think about it, it's not surprising because basically, well, actually, let me just show you this. Oh, here's a quote from, I helped launch JetBlue when I worked in advertising, and so this is before it was even called JetBlue, it was just called New Air as a code name. But they knew this when they launched, that it wasn't all the leather seats and so on. You can be a well-funded startup, have all new planes, a cool product, leather seats, live TV, call snacks, but none of it matters. The people are the brand, you are the brand as a person. So they really understood that it was the people that made the difference. Their competitors thought it was the stuff. They thought it was the TV, and there were other airlines tried to copy JetBlue at the time in the US, and they just really, but they hired the same toxic people and didn't understand that it was the people that made the difference. So this is how it works. This is a sort of a mantra. If you're a member of a Church of Latter-day Saints, you know this. It's sort of drummed into you. We think it's the kids in their white shirts and their little badges and their black ties that are the ones that convert people to the Mormon church. It's not. They just basically close the sale. What happens is that you are befriended, basically. This isn't necessarily a conscious sort of manipulative thing, but just, you know, you'll come across someone at work who's a member of the church. You'll realize that you like them, perhaps. You become their friends. You realize you actually have tons of things in common. You like the same films and music, but also perhaps share the same values. Then that person will say, why don't you come home for dinner? So you come home for dinner, you meet their friends and the family who are also in the church. And then probably next they'll say, why don't you come along to a service at our next meeting? And so what you then might say is, I don't know, I mean, I've always heard the Mormons are a bit weird, but Jeff is fine. I mean, I know him really well. He's kind of like me. Sure, it can't be that bad, I'll go along. And that happens for all cult-like organizations, is that the connective tissue is the people first. There was a sociologist of religion who studied the Moonies at Camp K on the West Coast, and they found the exact same thing, is that they, when they talked to a lot of the friends and family of people who'd just joined, and this was very early days, they asked, what do you think about your friends and family who've just joined the Moonies? And they would say, I don't know why they've done it. They believe complete rubbish. The whole kind of ideology makes no sense to me. I don't get it. They went back 6 months later, and most of those people had joined the Moonies. And they asked those same people, why did you join? And they said, it was the words of Reverend Moon. Well, clearly it wasn't, because they thought it was tosh. They joined because, they basically, as they put it, they bought the ideas of their friends. They didn't buy the ideas themselves, in a sense. They bought the ideas of their friends. And it happened again and again. It also is why people stay, is the power of the person. I'm going to play you a quote. It's going to be kind of, this is a telephone conversation I had with a woman in Utah who also runs an ad agency, actually. So she really kind of was able to look at the Mormon church through the lens of marketing. And she basically described that it was how rubbing people together makes them sticky, basically, in all kinds of ways. The more contact you have with other people in an organization, whether it's a church, a political party, whatever, it just doesn't matter, you're more likely to buy into the ideology because of your contact with them. There's loads of quantitative studies about this. And the Mormons are fantastic at this. Brilliant. I mean, I really studied the Mormons. I thought they were fascinating. They have operationalized this whole power of the person thing. On a Tuesday night, I think it is, it doesn't matter whether you're in Manchester or Manila, everyone will be doing the same thing. There'll be the message from the prophet will be taught in home. The men of the family will be out teaching other families. Every day, people are doing the same thing, bringing you into contact with each other. And in fact, there's no paid, there's a few in Utah, but there's no paid clergy in the Mormon church. It's the congregation runs itself. So you take on, it's in a rota system, you take on roles as the leader, the one who has the database, whatever it is. So you become incredibly invested and very much in contact, rubbing up against other people all of the time. So, by the way, all these quotes I've been playing, they're real quotes from real people, but I got people in my agency to record them. That's why they sounded so bad. It's because I wanted to disguise the real people. This, though, is her, and you can hear me burbling in the background.
But if you're not in church on Sunday, your home teacher's going to notice, your visiting teacher's going to notice, the bishop's going to notice, and somebody's going to call you, and somebody's going to visit with you. And if they discover you're sick, they're going to bring meals in.
Right.
And if they discover your marriage is in trouble, they're going to find you a counselor.
Right.
And if they discover you're out of a job, they're going to refer the church employment specialist to you and get you a job.
Right.
And if they discover you're out of groceries, they're going to write you a welfare slip to go to the bishop's storehouse to get groceries.
Right.
This church is brilliant.
Right.
Because the church becomes your life. And when you've got a bishop checking on you, and his 2 counselors checking on you, and 2 home teachers checking on you, and 2 visiting teachers checking on you, plus you're given a church job to be a home teacher if you're a man, a visiting teacher if you're a woman, plus you're probably given a job to teach a primary class or a youth class or an adult class on the Sabbath. Plus you're maybe assigned to the activities committee to plan a ward activity. The church becomes your family. The church becomes your social life as well as your spiritual center. Because the church is brilliant at marketing.
Same as brands, actually. This is a picture of what's called the launch pad in a Saturn dealership, as they were. We bought it because we like the brand. The brand is the dealer experience, a member told me rather. And by the way, Saturn and JetBlue is like the Virgin, basically, of the US. Now there is one, but it was. They know this. So both Virgin and Saturn recruited people who'd never worked in the industry before because they knew they were toxic. So in Saturn, for example, they completely reinvented the dealer experience. They made it look like a living room. They had people in there who have basically good interactive skills. So you're not kind of dealing with some greasy man in a kind of shiny suit who's trying to screw you. You feel like you're dealing with someone just like you. And the same with JetBlue. They did not recruit anyone who'd been in the airline industry because they thought they were toxic. They just recruited people who they thought were going to give, who just got on with people well. So, in fact, we actually printed up cards to give to employees, to give to people they thought should join the company that said, you looks like you're doing this job really well. How about turning it into a career? And they give it to anyone, whether it was someone at Starbucks or a nurse, whatever, who they thought was great, and say, hey, come in and join us. It was like, get like. It was come in and feel at home and be who you really are. We haven't really got time to go through this, but this is important. Given that the power of the person is so important, you have to have the right membership. And the right membership basically is, the ideal membership is those people with high interactive skills. So Mary Kay, when I talk to Mary Kay, when they have those house parties demonstrating the makeup and everything, they're not just selling the stuff. They're actually looking for people in the audience who are like them, who are really good, have high interactive skills, because they'll recruit them as another Mary Kay representative. And this is a quote, actually, from a member of this secretive cult called The Work that I talked to.
We didn't want losers. We chose good connectors, very intelligent people, a whole lot of Ivy League graduates, a lot of professionals, a lot of people who were successful in their field.
And this, of course, applies to, obviously, if you're using social tools, social technology. You're looking for these people to communicate. This is the ideology, I'll show this again in a minute, of eBay that Pierre Omidyar wrote, because he's fed up managing disputes. So he tossed this off, he told me this, he tossed this off one weekend and put it up, and then it basically became the ideology of the community. Now, eBay's business model simply wouldn't work unless people behaved like this. It's totally dependent on the right membership, on people reacting like real human beings with each other and not ripping each other off. And I really like the way that actually he describes everyone as the community. This was like, a decade ago or more that he wrote this. So as I said before, lots of studies show that the more interaction there is between members of the community, the more buy-in there is to the ideology. And the more buy-in there is to the ideology, the more people behave according to the ideology, whatever that is. It could be a political ideology, could be a religious ideology, could be the ideology in your film. So you must do whatever you can to get people to rub together, whether in actual ways or others. I mean, I bet when you do your UK Uncut stuff, that when people show up at the Vodafone, the relationships are formed there and they form friendships that happen again and again. When I did a big study when I was at Meetup to find out, what made people committed to a particular group and how to make them more committed. And basically what I found was that the original reason for going to a Meetup might be to become a better knitter or to save the world or whatever it was. And that was always the reason why people showed up. But by about the fourth or fifth time they showed up, another thing kicked in. And the thing that kicked in was that they wanted to see Bill or Jane again, as well as learn knitting. It was the social bonds had been formed. So it's really important to do that as much as you can, whether you're using social networking tools or any other. So I'm going to skip through this. So I just want to leave this quote up as a sort of a summary, basically. Whenever I've shown this in the US, I live in the US, a while ago, this was highly controversial and kind of anti-American that people thought, but it's part of human nature. People live in groups. Every human being enters the world as a member. From the earliest known history, people have lived together in families, clans, and tribes, have assembled in neighborhoods, communities, villages, towns, and cities, and have operated in gangs, clubs, unions, associations, and congregations, and innumerable other groups. The person and the group are not separable phenomena, but are simply the individual and collective aspects of the same thing. So when I did the study and wrote that book, this was before social networking tools, and what I was saying is, the next big thing is going to be community. And then all these tools came along, and now it's like a duh. But really, it was like a kind of, almost like, I don't know if many of you were around when Thatcher was around, and she said there is no such thing as society. That's kind of basically the attitude. But what I'll leave you with basically is that it doesn't matter what you are trying to organize, whether it's a movement or whether it's a following around your movie or whether it's a political action group you want to start, whatever, it doesn't really matter, or a church. You have to appeal to the fundamentals of belief and belonging. And anyway, that's it. Thank you very much.
So we're now going to move into this into the workshopy part of this. So we're now going to try and apply some of the principles.
Yeah. Are we doing on time? Shit.
Of this. And we're going to split you guys into 4 different groups. And there's 4 tables around here. And the way I'd suggest that we do it is we have filmmakers on that side of the room, activists on that side of the room. We see how many there are. And we might get a group around UK Uncut. We might get a group around Michael Norton here, who's creating a platform through which you can do social good. And we can use those as 2 examples. And then we'll pick a couple of films. And then we'll start creating an ideology around them. So can we just try and sort of separate the groups out? Well, you can pick. Yes, I would suggest that you go with Michael Norton, maybe.
So let's have activists over there by UK Uncut. Let's have movie makers over there by Sandy in the corner. Let's have, what was the other one?
Yes.
Activists over here, filmmakers over there, and then we'll split you into, if there's the groups are too big, we'll split you up again.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm going to go through that just a second. Yeah.
So what we'll be doing is we'll be getting you to write an ideology to begin with, and then we'll be trying to show you how you can sort of then get a group of people together around that ideology and spread the word.
So we're going to have to take some filmmakers and put them in the ideology group.
No, we're going to have two films.
Oh, you're going, aren't you? Good to see you. Finally, properly face to face. Oh, yeah, it's fine. Yeah. Thanks. Oh, yeah, you saw it last time, didn't you? Cool. Yeah, really good. Well, a woman came up to me just before I got up and said, she was here last year, she said, I really liked your talk, and I really took it to heart, and we spoke to me, and I went out and bought your book, and it turns out she'd grown up in Scientology. I said, yeah, it was right. Oh, God, I recognize it. Oh, fuck, yes. You know. Okay. Okie dokie, everyone. So here's the form. If you can bear with me just a second, I'll take like 5 minutes to romp through a couple of slides that shows you what to do. So the thing I didn't talk about in the talk I just gave was I talked about the power of the person. I didn't talk about ideology, which is the second most important thing you need to have. So I'm now going to give you some basic guidelines on how you write and how you develop a good ideology. So let me just explain what is it. It's a worldview, a meaning system, a belief system. I won't show you that. Why is it important? This is a quote from one of the most well-read business books, but I think expressed it really well. It says, the most effective and enduring organizations have one. Like the fundamental ideal of a great nation, church, school, or any other enduring institution, core ideology in a visionary company is a set of basic precepts that plant a fixed stake in the ground. This is who we are. This is what we stand for. This is what we're all about. Core ideology is so fundamental to the institution that it changes seldom, if ever. So what does it do? Basically, and again, it doesn't matter whether you're having a film or anything else, it gives purpose by having a vision of how the world should be. It creates the sense of identity and difference that I talked about with clear demarcation. So in your ideology, you're going to write one in a second, you need to say what you believe in and what you don't believe in, who belongs and who doesn't belong. It creates solidarity around shared beliefs, and it dictates behavior by having a clear doctrine. This is what we do, this is what we don't do. Also, by the way, if you're running an organization, if it's a production company, if it's a crowdfunding platform, if it's a big company or a political party, having a clear ideology makes life really easy. Why? Because it gives focus. There's a clear purpose of why the hell we're doing this thing. It gives drive. Your members or your employees are energized because they're on a mission. I now know what I'm doing. I'm going to do this, and if I do this, this will happen. Loyalty. They identify with the ideology and feel they are amongst like others who also buy in. Really, 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 really important. Everyone in here is sharing the same belief system. I'm at home. We're part of a family. Clarity in decision-making. This is like the practical thing, is that it makes it so easy to make decisions. In decision-making, all you have to ask is, does this align with the ideology or not? And it may be a fantastic idea, but if it doesn't align, don't do it. Come up with a better idea for what does align. Recruitment of the right customers and the right staff, those that also align with the ideology, exact same thing. It makes recruitment really easy. I'll show you in a second, I wrote a manifesto for Meetup. And we use it all the time to recruit people. And sometimes we see fantastic programmers or fantastic salespeople that we want to hire, but we ask ourselves, do they align with the ideology? Do they buy into the same things that we do? And if they don't, we'll say no, they can't join. Because if they do, it'll be destructive to the organization. So all that begs the question, what's in a good one? So these, I think, are the ingredients of a good manifesto. It has a vision. It paints a picture, and I'll leave this up, by the way. It paints a picture of how the world should be. So King's speech, I have a dream, is a literal expression of that. This is how the world should be, rather than it is now. And you need that because it needs to be inspirational. It needs to galvanize and activate people around it. So UK Uncut, I might suggest, where is she? Is she still here? There you go. Are painting a vision of, and actually living the vision. You know, they're kind of giving the national health services in various companies that should be but won't be if the cuts go through. It draws a line in the sand. We believe this and not that. It defines who belongs and who doesn't, so that people can look at it and say, oh yeah, that's me, I want in. Or, no, that's not me, and I'll go somewhere else where I do belong. It identifies an enemy, if you want. This is the optional extra. It's the obstacle to be overcome. Very good in movement making. You have to set a goal, basically. Like, there will be no poverty. And the people who are getting in the way of poverty are corporations or whatever. So these are the people we've got to nail. Defines behavior. I should do this and not that. And it demands action. I should act now because X, Y, Z. Some examples. Just read the whole speech. This is an excerpt. Of course, I Have a Dream, I think, is a brilliant expression of a manifesto for civil rights. And he was quoting there, of course, this great manifesto, which was the Declaration of Independence for America, which is an outstandingly good manifesto for a country, at least. I showed you the eBay one. I'm just going to read the Meetup one. Let's be fearless. Let's exercise our human right of assembly. Let's exploit it big time. Let's use the internet to get people off the internet. Let's bring back the handshake, the verbal debate, the smile, you know, some good old face-to-face, eye-to-eye contact. When people get together, amazing things happen. They advocate, they argue, learn, laugh, and share. Let's be a group. Let's be a real group. Groups have a history of making history. People unite, motivate, activate, and mobilize. Groups give us the power to face a health crisis, start a political movement, pursue a passion, launch a business, and turn strangers into friends, to be bigger than ourselves. Let's step away from our screens for a moment. Do without the PC, the TV, and the phone. People are more powerful than pixels. A real group can beat up a virtual group any day of the week. Let's find the others, the ones that want the same thing. Let's meet in real time, in real places, and make a real difference. Let's meet up. So the whole language there is meant to be, fuck, I've got to do it now. Yes, let's go. You know, and it's hopefully showing what we're not into, but clearly articulating what we are into and what we do stand for. Patagonia is a sports company, a sports clothing company in the US. I love this. They describe who belongs and who doesn't, basically. Committed to an uncommon culture. We prefer the human scale to the corporate, vagabonding to tourism, the quirky and lively to the toned down and flattened out. We used to call our own world of alpinists and surfers a dirtbag culture, of temp jobs and long summers, foraged meals and tribal travel that follow the seasons, from summer climbs in Yosemite to Baja's winter surf breaks and spring kayaking. And if many of us now work more than we climb and care more for our families than for bumming about, we still sound our appeal to the dirtbag within, the need for the wild dirtbag spirit to survive our eat-out culture. I mean, that's from a corporation. It's pretty cool. And then one of the organizations we actually created, no, not this one, we created the movement for Live Strong. But this is Live Strong's manifesto. We believe in life, your life. We believe in living every minute of it with every ounce of your being. This is a long one. It's actually really nice. But I just look at the language. You know, it's about we and let's, and this is the stand we're taking, and we believe in this and not that. I think that's the last one. Then Google. So that's, I'm sorry, that's like a big mental vomit I've given you about what's in a good ideology, I believe. But hopefully these can be some guidelines for the ideology you're going to write. So what I don't know what Mark just told you, but tell me if it's different. But what I think you should do is either pick a movie that one of you are working on or about to launch within your group. Make that decision really quickly, like in 2 or 3 minutes, and write an ideology for that. I would suggest that. I mean, one of the things I said when I was here last time is, are you a filmmaker with an issue or an activist with a film? So if you're an activist with a film, or perhaps you should be one, that's much easier to write an ideology for that, perhaps. So if there's an issue-based movie that you have, that will be a good candidate for writing an ideology. We believe that this, blah, blah, blah. So very quickly figure that out, and then write the ideology for that movie. For that community, or rather, write the ideology for the community that's going to be forming around your movie and the issue. Yeah. Of course, absolutely, yes. I'm saying movie, yeah, exactly. It could be like Why Poverty, isn't that what it's called? Which is going to be a whole series of documentaries about an issue. So it's basically about the issue that you want your community to support and build on and feel close around. And then for the activists, this should be really easy. You just pick one of you, it could be Buzzbank, could be UK Uncut, and write a manifesto for that. All right, so how long have we got?
So we'll see if we can do this in about 20 minutes. It should be collaborative if you can manage to do that. So quickly, just toss around a few ideas about what would be a good candidate to do this with. But the recipe is just in the kind of language that Doug described. I mean, I wouldn't make it that as long as what you've just seen. Make it just one paragraph that we can then pitch back to everyone else, and we'll see how effective we think this is being. But use that kind of, if you use that language of inclusion, it is this, therefore it's not that, but we believe and let us, etc. So if you just start with a good way to start, is you might get rid of it later, is just start with we believe, and then carry on writing.
We believe or let's is a good way to start.
Yeah, and this helps. It also helps define the purpose of what you're doing. I mean, what we're doing is two things. It's about purpose and it's about community. In every creative decision you make, you know that it's for a specific audience. So if it's a film, you actually do know, you've got in your mind the kind of audience that is going to be attracted to it. And it is therefore not another kind of audience.
Right.
And whether that's a commercial film, or you could still write a manifesto for a very commercial film, but then you'll be believing rather different things than a film which is just going to go around film festivals and try and maybe sort of mobilize activist communities, the like of which we've got quite a few of in DocFest this year. So if you see if you can sort of quickly toss around a few ideas for different films that be candidates. I know there's people on each table who've got very suitable films for this. And then likewise with the activists. And
Great.
We'll wander around.
By the way, this is possible. When I wrote the Meetup Manifesto, to write that, I went out and talked to Meetup members and did this exact same exercise with them. And they came back with amazing stuff in about 20, 25 minutes. I mean, stuff I wish I could just put up, well, maybe I will sometime online. So it is possible. Okay, let's get going.
Okay, folks, now, we're going to see where we've got to in this exercise. And of course, it is a bit of a tall order to get such a large group coming up with a manifesto for something that they only just heard of a couple of minutes ago. But let's see where we've got to. So we'll start with the filmmakers. So can we have a representative from this filmmaking table just read out what you've got to the wider group?
Hey, okay. Is this okay? Yeah. Okay, this was quite scattergun, so it's kind of all over the place, but we believe, should I introduce the film first?
Why don't you just do that first and see what kind of a picture we have about the film?
Okay, we believe the world should be a place that does not waste space. If you're a free thinker, a recycler, this is the kind of thing for you, that if you think that life is precious and space is precious. If you care, share, and are open-minded, and think that there should be a space for everyone's vision, together we can. Let's address the situation with your addresses. I quite like that one. Let's reclaim empty buildings. Let's rebuild community. Let's rejuvenate, reinvent, and empty bins, I think? Buildings, sorry. And then we came up with, we oppose those who refuse change, the wasters, hoarders, and those who use the law for their own gain, those in the media who portray a negative image of squatters, and put our film into action in your own community.
Would anyone like to, sort of, from a different group, like to hazard a guess as to what that film's about?
Yeah.
Was that right?
Yeah,
So,
kind of.
yeah, perfect. So it sounds like you've done quite a good job, actually, to me. So, I mean, you really have defined a community, and also the fact that you also, out of this, you've got a larger purpose than just a film as well, because you also want to sensitize people to the issues in the film. It's kind of a good approach that helps you define what it is that you actually want to do with that film. It's by identifying the purpose, your motivation to make that, can help really make that become quite clear. And then maybe the idea that there's an issue in that film, and you want to sensitize people to that issue, and then maybe you want to slightly make them do other stuff too, which you can also start thinking about now, of coming up with ways to allow that film to become a vehicle for wider involvement. Okay. Well done. I think you do a great job. So we'll try and do the same thing over here, and then again see if the other groups can work out what that film's about.
So we believe in a world where free speech is an unassailable right. We believe in the freedom of the individual to express themselves without government or corporate intervention. If you've ever been angered by government or corporate intrusion, but have been too frightened to speak up, if you love freedom and are pissed off about corporations or government getting too far into your life, then sign up here. Stand up and be counted on the side of free speech with no loopholes across borders. Stop the internet from being a spy machine. Put this logo on your website, no terms and conditions and no tick box. Join your name to a class action suit against corporations who demand terms and conditions.
Wow. Okay, anybody got any sort of ideas as to actually what that, what the media is behind that one? No?
It's a little bit.
Does that sound about right?
Yeah, it's specifically about the laws that are being passed in Iceland on the Icelandic Modern Media Initiative, but the movement is to make to protect individual freedom on the internet.
Okay. Now, so the interesting thing about that is you started off quite broad, and then it became very specific.
Yeah.
And when it was very broad, and you were saying, yeah, I was thinking at lots of points along that way, yeah, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me. And then when you became very specific, and it signed up here, and I was like, I don't know if that is me yet.
So you think it's too specific now?
I think where you got the action that you made was way too specific. Yeah. Actually, initially, you just want people to start to look at whatever it is that you created. You can then think about other things that you might want to be doing with them. Later, so that was that kind of call to action there probably ends up being, in some ways, it can be, you define the community then too tightly, and it becomes quite hostile before you've had a chance for it to actually sort of become a bigger movement.
So what you
but
talked
I think
about
it started out kind of amazingly well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about that curve of commitment you talked about, that would be further in. If people choose to do something easy, then maybe they choose to do that further
and then
on.
that could be way further down your manifesto. You'd have a sort of rather a longer manifesto.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So they might just,
do you want to add anything else?
No, good, good.
Okay.
Very good.
The activists.
Some are excellent. This should be easy. Michael.
Yeah.
Do you want to read out the manifesto as far as it's got?
No, they should. I'm going
off. Okay. Here, just give it a go, and then we'll see. It's illustrative.
Okay. If you are the kind of person who would like to invest in change transparently, if you're the kind of person who would like to support social change in the world, if you understand the struggle for doing good with no money, if you believe we are all connected in the world, you might want to join us. We are a group of social venturers, backers, supporters, and cheerleaders. Together we can make great things happen.
So I think I already sort of more or less mentioned what that was about. It's BuzzBank, which is a venture from Michael over there, who unfortunately has to leave now, but which is it's an online platform for social ventures for social good. Yeah. So this group had a real struggle actually coming up with a manifesto, and we think this is actually reveals quite a lot to my mind about BuzzBank, I suppose, in a sense, because if it's that difficult to create the ideology, it means that perhaps there's some kind of woolly thinking that's gone into it that kind of needs this kind of exercise to really sort of hone it. Do you think that's fair enough to say?
Yes. I mean, I don't. You tell me. I mean, it sounded like you couldn't figure out what the hell it was. Right. Well, I don't know if everyone heard that, but there was like, you were saying that it tried to be all things to all people and everything. It's like too big. It wasn't focused enough, and so it became really hard to figure out what it was, what it stood for, and why you should join, which is interesting. So I found this actually with other organizations that when they can't figure out those things, it means this probably means, not always actually, that they're not clear about who they are, what they're doing, and why people should join. Cool. So we were going to do another exercise called the commitment curve, which is something we use in online activism and actually for all kinds of things about how you recruit millions of people and ramp them up into taking action. But actually we don't have any time to do that because it's now 4:05. So which is a shame, maybe next year.
But you can probably just show, this time I think just show the commitment curve.
Yeah, okay, why don't I just show this? This is, it isn't just used in online activism, by the way. It's something I used at Meetup to help design the product, actually. Let me just show you this. This is it here. So the whole principle of this is that when in online activism, but actually if you're designing a website or wanting people to buy into a movie, if you ask for too big of an ask, you probably won't get as many people involved, and it may not be as effective. So, for example, this is a general commitment curve for most kinds of online activism things. You should ask frequently small, lower barrier to entry asks. So if you're running a campaign for All Out, which is this global gay rights movement we started, all we've done in the first 4 months is ask people to sign a petition. So that's really easy. You can click and you can send your email and all the rest of it, and it's done. Then the next action we asked was for them to post it on their Facebook page and tell a friend. And a very large but smaller proportion of people did that. The next one might be to write to a decision maker or contribute content or purchase and donate. And then attend an offline event or maybe even lead and organize an offline event. So as you can see, time and months along the bottom, engagement index along the top. If we had started straight off, UK Uncut is doing this really successfully, and I'd like to figure out how. But they're asking for the highest barrier, or the second highest barrier to entry action there, which is attend an offline event. Now, for most people, leaving their warm home on a cold night, exposing themselves to potential arrest, and showing up to demonstrate or occupying a store is not an attractive prospect. However, if they had done many of these actions before, they're more likely to do that. So, for example, what tends to happen is, we found, is that if you sign a declaration and a call to action, at a very low level, you've bought into the idea, you've bought into the mission, the goal of the movement. Then, if we ask you to tell a friend, you're probably likely to do that because you thought, well, I've done that thing already, I'll do another thing now. And then you might write to a decision maker, and basically you on-ramp the people at the lowest barrier to entry actions and then ramp them up with increasingly higher barrier to entry asks. And this is a sort of concept that generally works. And as I say, it's not just online activism, it's anything. I mean, at Meetup, for example, I realized we were basically asking everyone to do the very top thing. It was easy to join Meetup, and then immediately we went straight to the top because we were asking people to leave their warm home on a cold night and to meet complete strangers who might be an axe murderer. Who knows? And so what we've tried to do, not enough in my view, is put some of those other things in there. So enable people to meet the people before they show up. So do that in a forum, or maybe send each other videos, so that they are more predisposed to do that high barrier entry to thing when we ask them to. So that's a theory. It's a theory, it's a concept, there's always exceptions. But generally, we've found that this has worked very well. In All Out, for example, we've done several actions, which are both the first two. Now we have 500,000 people on our list who've already declared that they buy into this global gay rights principle. We're going to ask them to do more significant actions that require either more money, more time, or more emotional commitment. Does that make sense? Cool.
So actually, that commitment curve also pretty well describes the trajectory of making a film these days as well. But I hope this has been useful. In fact, I would really appreciate some kind of feedback, because we've never done this before. And I think that there's a good idea in here somewhere, and it would be really good to get your feedback on how this went, so that we can sort of hone this idea. And just to finish up today's activities, I just want to introduce you to Jeremiah Alexander. who has designed a game that was being playing on Twitter during the festival. And in fact, this whole game, sort of part of having Social Media Day was structured around the idea of this game. And he's just going to tell you a little bit about it. This is something that's been running in the background of DocFest this year, and his experience of creating a game that you uncover completely by stealth.
Can I put it on?
Yep.
So I'm Jeremiah Alexander, and I work at a company called Ideonic, and we develop games and digital media, but it's all focused around stuff which helps people to learn or inspires some form of social change. But generally, I'm just interested in stuff being more fun, especially around communication. So at the moment, we're doing a lot of projects which are about facilitating communication and helping people to better share their opinions and voices. So there's a lot of stuff that we're doing in schools around that. Me and Mark, about a year ago, had a discussion around doing more stuff using Twitter at conferences. And so we decided to just quickly put together this little game just to track what people were doing on Twitter. So I don't know if any of you guys, anyone here has been playing or anyone stumbled across it and been awarded badges. I think a few hands. So basically what we were doing with this was really quite straightforward. Anyone who used the #chef.fest the hashtag for any of their posts on Twitter, we grabbed all of their tweets that they used with that hashtag, and then we analyzed them for certain keywords. In a very simple case, certain keywords, but then also times of day when people used these keywords, and then rewarded people with badges based on those actions. So as you can see, we kind of got all of this online, and sorry, the internet's really slow, so you can't really see all of it. But we can see the sort of top 10 players that we had take part, and I'll just kind of click on one of those so we can look at some of the badges. But just to give you some random statistics, and Mark told me to highlight some of the stuff that we learned. I think there were over 700 people who tweeted using the Chef DocFest tag since we started tracking. The top badge, which was unlocked, was the connector badge, and the connector badge was awarded for sharing URLs, of which 636 URLs were shared, and 312, there was also a badge for sharing hashtags in combination with the Chef DocFest hashtag. There were 312 of those shared. And so kind of, let me see if there's any other randomly interesting stuff. There are a few badges which no one unlocked, which I'll just kind of point out. One of the main, there was a DOP badge which we had for sharing video URLs. No one shared any videos. And funny enough, there was a badge for coffee shakes if you mentioned coffee more than 3 times in quick succession, which no one did. There was a sound engineer badge for sharing audio boo links, so there was no one audio booing at this event. And also there was a badge for mentioning dinner or lunch or hungry loads of times, and no one got that one either. But it was really sort of interesting to just see the different people's experiences during the conference. And just to give you a highlight of some of the top badges. Yeah, as I mentioned, the top one was about sharing links. This is really slow, isn't it?
It's really slow. It's a mess.
Okay. Well, actually, you can go and have a look at this. Yeah, but what we started doing on the second day was started to giving out some prizes for the top players. So I have a prize here for the grand winner. Which I thought what we'd do is we'll look at the leaderboard, and we're just going to go down the list of the leaderboard, and whoever's in this room and is highest on the leaderboard gets the grand prize. So in first place, we have Quark Films with 26 badges. Is anyone from Quark Films in the room? Ooh. In second place, we have Future Artists with 16 badges. So if you'd like to come up and collect your prize. You're welcome. So that was just an experiment that we done as part of the conference. We just wanted to see how people were using Twitter. What I'll probably do is I'll probably write up some of the key things that we found out. This will stay online, and we'll just post some of the statistics on there as well. But hopefully next year we'll have some more prizes, and maybe the prizes linked specifically to the badges. So maybe if you get the the coffee badge, then you can get discounts on your coffee. That would be really cool. Just a funny note, there was 42 early bird badges unlocked for tweeting before 8 a.m., I think it is, and 14 night owl badges unlocked for tweeting after 1 p.m. And what else was quite popular? 27 party goer badges unlocked. So interesting stuff. But third highest badge unlocked was the deal maker badge for mentioning anything about pitching or making deals. So I think everyone must have had quite a good conference. Thank you.
So thanks for your attention and for your participation, everyone. I think in a way this is probably, doesn't it more or less brings the conference program of DocFest this year to an end. And I don't know about you guys, but I really feel like going for a drink now. So we've probably got quite a few things that we want to collectively discuss, so I'd suggest that we go down to the showroom bar and talk about them there. Thank you.
Thanks for being such a good audience.